Are your hamstrings always tight? Do you feel like no matter what you do, your hamstrings just do not loosen up? And because of this, it's keeping you from exercising with any type of consistency. Well, on this week's episode of the Exercises Health Podcast, we're going to lay out a simple plan for you to follow to solve this once and for all. We're going to cue our introduction and we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are discussing this idea of how in the world should you work out if your hamstrings are always tight? You know, tight hamstrings are one of the most common complaints that I hear across the board from people, and oftentimes it keeps them from exercising. But should this be the case? Should you not have to exercise because your hamstrings are always tight? If you're finding that is the case for you, we want to lay out a plan for you to follow in order to solve that for you once and for all. But before we do, we have an ask for you.
Yes, if you didn't already know, one of the best things that you can do to help us grow our podcast, help us grow our following and our reach and our ability to get more and more guests on this podcast is to leave a simple rating and review. So if you wouldn't mind, pause the podcast now, go to Apple Podcasts and leave us that rating and review. And can I tell them about our special gift?
We have a special gift for you that we're so excited to give you.
Yes, if you've been following us, you like what we're talking about, but you want to have more hands-on guidance on how to apply it, we have actually created a free 2 weeks into our membership that you can check out. All you have to do is go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com and you can get your 2 week free trial right there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited about that because I think a lot of people have been hearing about our membership, but not really sure what it all entails. So if you find that you are in that group, definitely go to exerciseforlifestudios.com. Again, it's $0 for 14 days. Sign up. You're going to love it. But today we want to tell you about how to go about exercising if you feel like your hamstrings are always tight. Always tight. I mean, Julie, I talk to people day in and day out, week after week. They're feeling, well, my hamstrings are just too tight. And a lot of times, this is keeping them from exercising, is keeping them from being physically active, is keeping them from doing the things that they want to do, at least as comfortably as they would like to do them. So if you're finding yourself in that boat, we have a simple plan that that we want to lay out for you to follow to help you solve that once and for all.
You know what? Tight hamstrings are actually such a pain, seriously, that people try a lot of things and it doesn't work for so long that they then accept that they have tight hamstrings, like it's almost like a permanent diagnosis or something. And also there's always like this unchangeable reason, right? Like, I have tight hamstrings because I'm tall. Well, and I can't change that I'm tall, so I can't change my tight hamstrings. Or I have tight hamstrings because I bend over all the time. I'm in the garden too much. And I'm dedicated to my garden, so I guess I just have to, right? So it's like this thing. But what's so interesting about hamstrings is that they are a muscle group. And the cool thing about muscles is that they change, and they can change fast. It's not like when you have a bone spur, which takes years and years, maybe even decades for your body to create a bone spur. Your body has put your tightness or tension in your hamstrings, but muscle tension is very easily changed. We just need to know how to do it. And you're probably here because you've probably tried a lot of stuff already. So good news, we're going to give you some different info. We do not have the one magical stretch that you haven't tried yet because you've probably tried 50 million already. It's not about that. It's about taking a muscle perspective on this so that you can change how your muscle's doing.
Absolutely. So the first thing that we want to make sure that you're doing is that you're getting up and you're moving consistently throughout your day, okay? Nothing where you're exerting yourself a whole bunch, but 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a time, but doing it multiple times a day. You know, one of the biggest things that people say is, I have tight hamstrings because I sit all the time. And because their job requires them to sit, or their commute requires them to sit, or this kind of non-negotiable thing in their life requires them to sit. In a lot of ways, they feel like, well, I guess like my hamstrings are just always going to be tight then. But here's the thing. You try your best to break up those long periods of being sedentary with just a little bit of movement. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a time, every 30 to 60 minutes, set your phone timer, get up, move around, walk to the restroom, grab some water, then sit back down. I tell you, when you do that, the periods where you feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm just sitting for so long, because you're breaking them up, they don't feel like they have nearly the detrimental impact on your body as to when you're just sitting and sitting and sitting and not moving. So just that little bit of getting up and moving around consistently throughout your day, that's going to be a really big thing to start to nudge your body in the right direction, from not only from an exercise and health perspective, but also from a hamstring sensation perspective.
Yeah, we like to think like 5 minutes out of every 30 minutes or 10 minutes out of every hour, because actually it's normal and your body should start tightening up when you're seated for a long time. Our bodies are always adapting to its environment. And so if you have this long period of time, whether you get to choose or you don't get to choose, like let's say you're on an airplane for a really long time or in the car or at work or whatever, your body's still adapting and saying, hey, well, why are we keeping all this mobility? This person's sitting for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and why should we spend all the expensive energy to keep this person as mobile as they would like to be? We're going to keep them as mobile as they are. So you have to show your body like, hey, we're going to be getting up all the time. And so wherever you can fit that into your day, try to be consistent with that. Again, not thinking, well, at least I walked for an hour today. We're talking about the other kind of exercise where you're moving throughout your day. It's not intense. Maybe you're thinking, get up, get water, get up, say hello to a coworker, get up, do a lap around my house. That kind of movement where it's not all together, but it's all chunked up, spread out.
Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, that's great. Like, I can definitely add that in, but I don't know if that's going to do it for me. Or maybe you're thinking, well, I'm already like pretty active, throughout my day. I don't feel like I sit all that much throughout my day, yet my hamstrings are really tight. This is where step number 2 comes in. And step number 2 is really about strengthening 4 key areas of your body. When it comes to your hamstrings, there are 4 key areas that you need to keep in mind with your strength training in order to make sure that you are focused on them, and that you are doing enough exercise for them to keep those areas strong. And the first one is actually going to be like your core and low back area, your abdominals, your obliques, the muscles on the sides of your trunk and your low back muscles, everything kind of wrapping around your waistline, all of those muscles within there. You want to make sure that you are doing exercise for those muscles to make sure that they get and stay strong. And that in and of itself will help to kind of support the other areas of your body. So your hamstrings, which often have to take on a lot of workload for other areas that are just flat out weak, those hamstrings can start to calm down a little bit.
That's right. The next area is your hips and your knees. And I'm going to put them both together because hamstrings actually cross 2 joints, your hip and your knee. So this is directly where your hamstring is controlling. Obviously, there's always like the indirect stuff in the core and in the ankle, but directly they cross the knee and they cross the hip. So making sure you're thinking of a well-rounded, full routine for your hips and your knees. So thinking I'm doing it, be working the hamstrings. Yes, you do need to strengthen your hamstrings even when they're tight. You need to work your quads. You need to be working your glutes, your hip ab and adductors. So you're thinking full scope for the hips and the knees.
Now, a lot of times when we're talking about, okay, well, like you need to do exercises for these areas, and we can start to jump to this idea of like, well, I don't know all the different muscles or whatnot, like how do I know that I'm doing exercises for the specific muscles? And I love where your head is going because you're curious about how to make it right for yourself. And I'd ask you to actually just pause that for a second and zoom out. Instead say, well, instead of thinking I need to do, exercises specific for, my quadriceps and my hip flexors and my glute med and glute min, everything like that. Instead, if you just think about the directions that your hips move, if you think about the directions that your core moves, your core, we talk about, it kind of folds forward and arches backwards. It moves side to side, kind of like a windshield wiper, and then it twists and turns. Okay. So you want to do exercises that are challenging those 4 motions. With your hips, we're thinking kind of front to back again, side to side, again with the legs coming apart and legs coming together. There is twisting and turning that happens with the hip, but from an exercise perspective, that can actually be pretty difficult to challenge. So instead of thinking about, well, I want to necessarily challenge directly the spinning in and spinning out of the hip, if you keep your focus on the front to back and the side to side, that will do a lot because you'll get a lot of carryover from training the twisting with the trunk into the rotation with the hips.
Absolutely. Now, the last area you want to focus on, so we said there was 4. So we said core, hips, knees, ankles. All right. So the ankles are going to be very influential over obviously the ankle, but also a lot of muscles cross from the ankle into the knee. And the knee is very influential on how the hamstrings are functioning. So you want to make sure you're really strengthening your ankles. You're doing calf raises. You're lifting your toes up to work the front of your shins. You're rotating in and out, keeping your foot and your ankle very strong. That will really help to strengthen and support whatever is causing your hamstrings to be extra tight all the time.
Absolutely. So hitting these 4 areas, again, the trunk, the hips, the knees, which I didn't really talk about the motions, but I mean, a lot of people are aware that their knees kind of bend and straighten. There is some spinning that happens at the knees, but again, that can be more difficult to challenge from an exercise perspective. So if you stay with the straightening and bending exercises, so like the leg extensions, leg curls, as they're commonly called, that will do wonders for helping to strengthen the muscles that support your knees. And then the kind of lifting up of the foot, what we call dorsiflexion, and then the pointing down of the foot, which is like a calf raise or plantar flexion, that will really help, the muscles that control the ankles. So thinking about those 4 areas and making sure that when you're going in exercise, it doesn't mean that you can't do upper body. It doesn't mean that, you can't work your arms or your shoulders or stuff like that, but make sure that you are working these areas of your body at least twice a week. Okay. At least twice a week. A lot of times when it comes to doing leg exercises, it's not uncommon for people to shy away from them. Just be like, well, I'm going to lift my arms because I'm going to get my legs with cardio. And, that's fine and well. Certainly you are working your legs with cardio. But if you're finding that your hamstrings are feeling particularly tight, then we need to make sure that you are doing exercises to help support the areas that the hamstrings might be getting tight which are often like your core, your hips, your knees, and your ankles. So think about adding those in at least twice a week with your workouts. All right. There's one final tip that we have for you, and that is when you are going and working out, you need to make sure that you are respecting your range of motion. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when they start feeling tight is they will go and do an exercise and try to get a stretch with the exercise because they're trying to relieve the tightness while they're actually doing the exercise. And that oftentimes is violating their body's range of motion, which as a result, more times than not, their body tightens up more because of that. So we want you to respect your range of motion. You're still going to be using your full range of motion, but it's your symptom-free range of motion, which means no pain, no popping, no clicking, no discomfort, no stretching sensation, no joint sensation, no nervy sensation. The sensation that you should be experiencing is of your muscles contracting, of your muscles squeezing, and at some point along the way, your muscles fatiguing as well.
Now, what's really interesting about tightness is that our body puts it there for a reason. It's not a mistake. It's not like an accident that your body has made your hamstrings tight or symptomatic or anything like that. So whenever you're approaching anywhere in your body, really, and especially your hamstrings, you're like, dang, my hamstrings are tight. I don't really want them to be tight. You have to remember, well, my body has put it there for a reason. I don't know why, but my body has put it there for a reason. So when you're exercising, we need to respect what your body has set up for you. Now, when it comes to this tightness, a lot of times people feel like if I feel the tightness or feel the stretch when I'm doing an exercise, that means that I'm going to make a positive impact on that tightness or that stretch. But actually, your body is showing you via symptoms, via tightness, right? The symptom of tightness, which we feel when we're stretching, is telling you where your range is and where it isn't, right? So when you're moving through a range, let's say you're doing some squats and you start getting maybe 3/4 of the way down and you start feeling your tight hamstrings. And you think, okay, well, Julie and Charlie are saying don't stretch, but everyone else in the gym world usually says to stretch them. Well, the thing we recommend that you do is as soon as your body gives you that symptom, saying that it's not okay to go here because I'm giving you a symptom, you stop immediately and then you return to your starting position. You can apply that to any exercise, like your knee flexion, your knee extension, your hip ab and adductors. When your body gives you a symptom, you have to stop because your body, not stop the exercise, but stop the range, right? Because we're trying to define what is my range of motion, right? And that is going to be range of motion that is symptom free. So A symptom is going to be that tightness feeling that you don't want. And what happens is the more and more that you stay within your symptom-free range of motion, you don't feel tightness when you're exercising, you don't pull on the tightness or stretch the tightness when you're exercising and strengthening, the more range your body's going to give you that's symptom-free. So the more and more your body's going to relax the tightness on its own. We're not going to be yanking all over it. You've probably already tried that. That's probably why you're here listening to this podcast. You've realized it always comes back. So we're saying we need to strengthen the body so that we can start eliminating reasons why your body might purposefully set up this tightness. And we're trying to say, hey, all these areas, my trunk, my hips, my knees, my ankles, they are strong and stable. I consistently strengthen them, and I make sure I'm staying in a range of motion that is full but pain-free, full but tightness-free, full and stretch-free, right? And the more and more you'll notice that your body will give you range and fast, usually, unless it's protecting against something that's not going to change fast, like an actual injury or something that's torn or whatever your body might be doing. But a lot of times people just get tightness because of underlying weakness, and they just don't realize that they're weak because they're not working every joint in all the ranges that joint does. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're respecting your range of motion. This is very different than what you have probably heard, but we see changes and results here different than many other places around. So we invite you to try it because it will literally change your mind about how you should work with and respect tightness. We always find tightness is something to be respected. It's there for a reason. We're not going to try to annihilate it or remove it. We're going to change things in our body so that our body might have the opportunity to remove it by itself.
Exactly. So make sure you're getting up and moving consistently throughout your days. Do strengthening exercise at least twice a week for your core, your hips, your knees, and your ankles. And while you're doing so, respect your range of motion. Julie, I have one more bonus item.
You just thought of it?
Well, I didn't. I want to add it in. Okay. And the reason why we didn't include it with the main three is because the initial step you have to take yourself, but every other step above and beyond that, somebody else has to do for you. So we want to give you the ones that you could fully do by yourself to start. But step number 4 is if you have an MAT practitioner in your area, somebody who practices muscle activation techniques, give them a shout, send them an email, get on their schedule. Okay, the entire purpose of muscle activation techniques is to figure out where in your body you have muscles that are not working enough, causing other muscles to have to overwork. So if you're feeling like your hamstrings are always tight, always achy, like you can never loosen them up, they're likely doing too much because other muscles within your body are not doing enough. And an MAT practitioner is specifically trained to identify those underactive muscles and to get those muscles working better. So the 4th action item that you take is you find an MAT practitioner in your area. If you're in the Chicagoland area, that's where we are. Feel free to give us a shout. But otherwise, find one in your area and get on their schedule. It can be a total game changer for you.
Yes. And the best part about MAT is that you don't have to be like dying in pain and sweat because of the stretching. But yes, the whole premise of MAT is find the underworking muscles that are causing others to overwork, and overworking muscles are tight muscles because they just stay tight. They're trying to protect, and they're going to keep returning and keep protecting until those underworking or not working muscles are brought back up to speed or brought back into the picture. Your body is just an amazing protection machine. So it's very difficult to get rid of tight muscles if they're trying to protect and the reason they're protecting is still present.
Absolutely. So if you're wanting guidance on how to implement these steps, specifically these first 3, and really making sure that you're doing your exercises for your core, your hips, your knees, your ankles, and that you're respecting your range of motion, the program that we'd recommend is the Fit and Flexible program within the Exercise for Life membership. That is specifically designed to implement the key principles that you need to include within your workouts to make sure that not only are you getting stronger with your workouts, but you're getting more flexible. Your range of motion is improving, your joint mobility is improving, and it largely stems from this step that we gave you today of respecting your range of motion. So if you'd like to try that program out, you can complete the program in the 2 weeks for free. You just go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com, sign up. You'll be able to complete that program within the 14-day free trial, and can just see, hey, how did it work for your body? We'd love to get that feedback from you because we've heard so many rave reviews from other people who have tried this Fit and Flexible program. So if you're finding that your hamstrings are just not loosening up and you want to know how to go about exercising and want our guidance in real time while you're doing it, again, the program is called Fit and Flexible. It's a premium level program that you get as either a monthly member or a premium member, but you go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com. You'll get your free 14-day trial, and you'll be able to get in that Fit and Flexible program within those 14 days, and you'll be able to see, okay, yeah, like my range of motion is improving. Yeah, I'm becoming more flexible. Yeah, my hamstrings are not feeling as tight anymore. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that feels like they can't work out because of how tight their hamstrings always are? Share this episode with them so they can understand the key steps that they need to take within their workouts, within their day, within their week to make sure that they are able to exercise and do so in a way that is respecting their hamstrings and can help their hamstrings loosen up. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.